If this district is showing me a future New Zealand landscape, I welcome the change. Orchards of nut trees will probably one day relieve the familiar sheepscape. Nuts are one of several now crops. They're sure to be highly profitable, if not a little boring to farm. On the other hand, I could easily become a flower grower. It's claimed that the clear skies of central Otago, with its high ultraviolet radiation, produces astonishingly good blooms that hold their colours even when dried. Even roadside weeds are dried for sale, but the best blooms from here are sold throughout New Zealand and are exported as well.
Hi there.
Good day, sir.
Ron Gordon, is it?
That's right.
Yeah, Alan Brady gave me your name. I understand you got some pretty good trees around here.
Oh, yes. You want to have a look at them?
Oh, I wouldn't mind. I'm quite interested in them.
I give thanks for Ron Gordon's overgrown farmlet. His was no new venture, and his trees have stories as long as their trunks.
Now, what I wanted to show you about this tree, you've got to go up there 60 feet before you come to a major branch. And as you come down, you can look at every branch. They go out at right angles. There's not one branch poking up to make an oval knot. When you get them at right angles, you've got a minimum of knot.
Yes.
Now, down to ground level, before you've got a stump, you could practically saw it at the ground. Now, a friend of mine in farm forestry declares that that tree should be the basic stock for our forestry, and we'd have better trees.
Gee.
These trees were all planted in the spring of 1873. That's 112 years old.
There's not too many Pinus radiata that are 112 years old, Ron.
There's some of them getting a middle nearer 12.
That's right.
The trees that Bendix Hallenstein planted have done far better than the house they were planted to landscape. Hallenstein made his money from gold indirectly. He was a draper who turned manufacturer because the miners couldn't procure a decent pair of trousers.
Now, that's a beautiful cedar of Lebanon there, Ron. How did it come to be growing here?
Well, Hallenstein, like everybody else, when he'd made his money, he wanted to see the land of his fathers. And he was travelling in the Holy Land in 1894. He collected a cone from one of the cedars of Lebanon. And it's from that cone this seed was grown.
The original owner had a passion for planting trees. The new owner has a passion for enthusing people about them and the old buildings on his farm. Ron showed me a Norman arch, reputed to be the finest example of this architecture in the Southern Hemisphere. The modest archway has attracted no less notable a visitor than the architect of New Zealand's new Parliament buildings, Sir Basil Spence.
When he saw this, he said to me, now please put a plain vertical board doorway in that arch. That's one of New Zealand's few pieces of really choice weathered stonework. So coming from him, I thought I'd better put it in. And I said, Sir Basil, I've got a pair of very nice, ornate, wrought iron hinges. Will I put them on it? No, you don't put them on it. Just put a plain vertical board doorway. Your beauty's in your stone, and just put in a plain vertical board doorway to complement it. So there's Sir Basil's wish carried out.
Lake Hayes is a small, shallow lake surrounded by farmland, and therein lies the source of its problem.
Good numbers of birds. Must be plenty of food in the lake.
It's supposed to be choking with weed because it's so shallow and because of enrichment from fertilizer running off the surrounding land.
Well, there's geese and a few Canada geese over there feeding on the lake bottom. Ducks. Plenty of scorp. They're the little diving ducks. They can dive to considerable depth after their food. Feed on plant and animal matter on the bottom. They need fairly clear water, so Lake Hayes can't be too clogged with weed. This carwow, the black shag, doesn't look like it there, but their neck is capable of great distension. They can deal with a wriggling, 70, 75 centimetre eel.
I even spotted some coots on the lake. I thought they were ducks at first, but their bill gives away their kinship with pukekos and other rails. It's easy to mistake them. Their behaviour is most duck-like. My line should have taken me across the Shotover River at Arthur's Point and on to Queenstown. Jet boats make Hamilton turns close by the place where gold was first discovered on the Shotover River. It's been the richest gold river in New Zealand and seems to be shaping up to be the richest river in the new gold rush.
Thought you would have grown out of it.
You thought so.
I found the lure of the Shotover was too powerful. It was a detour I just couldn't resist. Most of the other passengers had little idea what they were in for, whereas I maintained a white-knuckled confidence in Dave, our chatty driver. The road to Skippers enjoys the reputation of being one of the hairiest public roads in New Zealand.
An American guy came with me the other day and he says, can't you get over any further to the left? And I says, if I get over any further to the left, I'll scratch the bus. And he says, scratch the bloody bus. He says, I'll pay for it. Hey!
A few bends and a few stories later, there seemed to be many more white knuckles in the bay.
It's the richest river in the world for the amount of gold taken from it. Right up until they found gold in the Klondike in Alaska, and then it became the richest river. The Shotover is actually known as the second richest river.
The Shotover is dug down very deeply, leaving a jagged, sawtoothed rock and golden tussock valley, quite different from any landscape I've seen so far on this journey. The road was designed to bring gold out 100 years ago, not to handle all the traffic coming in on the tourist rush.
Well, you must have had quite a few narrow escapes on this job, I suppose.
Oh yeah, every now and again you have to pass someone in a narrow spot. I met a guy coming out of here one day and on a blind corner, and we sort of met nose to nose. And I pulled over and he pulled over and we came up beside each other. He sticks his head out the window and he says, if you had bloody hit me, he says, I would have punched you in the snout. But anyway, that sort of thing happens and we laugh about it and carry on down the road.
The Skippers Road is becoming rather unstable in several places, which is a bit of a worry. Not only was it not designed for this sort of traffic, it wasn't designed for the weight of cars, buses and all the tour vans bringing the campers, trampers and rubber rafters up into the Shotover.
Is there any rafts down there? Occasionally we see a raft in the river around about here.
As we passed the rafter starting point, I saw a possible way out. It was either that or walk. I wasn't going over that road again. But having got this far up into the valley of the mighty Shotover, I wasn't in a hurry to leave anyway. The turnaround point for the buses was at a sort of hands-on museum of the gold mining era. It contained the sort of relics which are now quite familiar to me on this part of the journey. Of much more interest was Dave's information on the falcons. As he makes the journey regularly, he's observed several pairs of these elegant birds.
These falcons, you've seen them around here, you reckon?
Yeah, there's been some, just circling around. I haven't actually seen them sitting, so I'm not sure exactly where they are, but just circling and squawking and making a lot of noise around here. Yeah, quite often, just in this area mostly.
Yeah, well, they could be a territory here. I'll have a look round anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, all the best.
Good luck.
See you.
All right, bye.
I did see one falcon circling, far in the distance, but it never came close. But I wasn't disappointed. I saw the shot over on the sort of day you tell yourself that this is where I'll come to live one day, but of course you never do. On the way down to the rafts, I met Jim Shaw, a retired Southland farmer who had done it, and who's seen plenty of falcons, or sparrowhawks as he called them.
I didn't think the blackbird had a chance of getting anywhere, but he went down on a dive. And the sparrowhawk, he folds his wings. There was only sticking out about that far, right into the body, and a real screaming down. You pictured a Spitfire in the last war, but I thought, oh well, the blackbird's had it. But at the last moment he just went down and continued his dive, and up he went. But the sparrowhawk, he had to put on the brakes, stop, and then he had to flap her. But they'd come down a lot in elevation, and the same thing carried on again. The blackbird was still quite a distance above the sparrowhawk, and they continued on there for a little while, and then the blackbird, he does another dive. Whoosh, he goes, and the sparrowhawk folds his wings in and follows him in this repetition. He just come down and up again when the sparrowhawk got close, and of course the sparrowhawk had to put
Stop
on
again.
his brakes and flap up again.
Ah, yeah.
It was just like two planes manoeuvring. You wouldn't credit that a blackbird or any bird would have so much under his hat.
Yeah, sort of like old dog-fighting planes in the war.
Yes. But still, I suppose it was his life, and he was doing his best to keep it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, quite apart from avoiding sparrowhawks or falcons, I mean, things like blackbirds must find it a bit tough in the winter up here, wouldn't they?
I think they would too. You don't see a great... They probably take more to the bush. You see, in the open spaces here, there's not many. You get last year there was a few sparrows around here, but most of the winter. But then we had a very mild winter.
Yeah.
And the other smaller birds, if it's been wet, where you'll often find the odd one frozen to death. He's got wet, you see, and that's it.
Yeah.
When it gets colder, he's just freezes to death.
Gee. There's plenty of light in here, like you've got enough to run your solar heating panel.
Yes. On the shortest day here, you get 6 hours of sunshine.
And you shoot goats and possums, whatever you can, do you?
Yes, well, I live on goat meat. I wouldn't give you a thank you for mutton. And, of course, anything I can get for the dog. If you take him for a run, he generally gets the odd possum at night. And the possums seem to be very dopey at night. The dog can pick them up when they're still eating grass on the side of the road. You're supposed to be able to see in the dark, but how good the eyesight is, I don't know.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed talking to Jim. He's obviously up there for keeps, and he treasures the isolation of the valley. His experience is so vastly different to the thrill seekers who pass by far below his yard.
Forward pedal! Forward pedal! And stop!
Only the Yukon River in Alaska has yielded more gold than the shot over. Even today, $2 to $3 million worth of the real stuff is extracted each year, but the new gold isn't scraped from the bottom. It comes yahooing and tumbling over its surging rapids.
Forward pedal! Take it out, got to avoid it! Stop! And back pedal, back pedal, back pedal! Back pedal! Back pedal, back pedal! Back on the left, forward on the right! And forward pedal! Forward pedal! And stop! And right turn! Right turn! Right turn! Back up! Forward on the left! And hold on! And back up! And back! Forward pedal! Forward pedal! And right side left! Okay, back over! And back pedal, back pedal, back pedal! And stop! Bit of water to bed, get a little bit wet. Forward pedal, forward pedal, forward pedal, forward pedal! Forward pedal! Back pedal hard, back pedal hard. Back pedal hard. Forward pedal, forward pedal, forward pedal.
The Oxenbridge Tunnel marks the end of the ride. Four brothers seeking to divert the river and make their fortune from the dry bed took 3 years to cut it through, but their effort never paid off.
Forward pedal. Forward pedal, negative. Forward pedal, forward. Here we go. Negative, forward pedal. Forward pedal. Forward pedal. And push with it. Okay, here we go. And one, whoa.
The raft ride had brought me face to face with the rocks of the Shotover. The river has undercut the fractured schist rock, and that gave us the thrills of the gorge. Much of the coarse gravel off the sides was deposited on the gentle flowing stretch back near the bridge. Rapid erosion gives the Shotover a milky appearance. This is further intensified because it has no lake to settle the sediment from its waters. As the Shotover follows its course out into the Kawerau and then onto the Clutha further east, it bestows its colour on them. It's only a few kilometres from Arthur's Point west down the glacial valley to Queenstown. I am now at the City of Gold, the El Dorado of latitude 45 south, Queenstown. The gold rush happens here every day, accompanied by the Earnslaw's whistles and singing cash registers. The tourist heart of the South Island seems to be under a lot of strain caused by severe congestion. And I'm glad I don't have to look for accommodation in this place where New Zealanders used to go for their holidays. The locals here are constantly adding to the ways that they can extract the tourist gold. For the tourist, it isn't too painful, as their money usually goes a lot further here than it does in most other countries. If the average American makes 3 times the wages I do and their dollar's worth twice ours, that means they're 6 times better off than I am. Well, I do envy their spending power, but not necessarily the goods they're encouraged to spend it on. Goodbye, New Zealand. I love my genuine sheepskin jacket, sheepskin slippers, my authentic sheepskin lamb, a lambskin kiwi, a possumskin bear, womble, kiwi fruit, and all the other stuff. Every day my bag becomes a little heavier with the souvenirs I've collected along the way, shells, pebbles, and that sort of thing. I think most travellers like to take something home, and in Queenstown, this is a rich source of tourist gold. I always think of the 18th century British explorer Captain James Cook when I come into a souvenir shop. You see, he and his crew were partly responsible for the popularity of one of our most famous souvenirs. They were so taken with this object that the New Zealanders at the time were, well, they were only too pleased to supply the market that they created for tikkies. So by the time these English explorers left New Zealand, they would have been laden down with these little objects, are thought to represent a fetus and to be symbols of the power of fertility. Well, fertility mightn't be in vogue at the moment, but tikkies still are. They're everywhere. Originally, tikis were carved in jade. A trade in fake tiki climaxed at the end of last century when several factories turned out tribal facsimiles, also in jade. Now they're pressed out in green plastic. But jade is still revered as New Zealand's old gold. Jade's a reasonably hard sort of stone, but its special quality is its toughness. We tend to think of the two as being the same, hardness and toughness, but they're quite different when it comes to stone. If one surface scratches another, the quartz is harder than the jade. But to measure its toughness, if I was to hit each of these with a hammer, the quartz would shatter, and that's what the gold miners did to extract the gold out of the quartz. So this would probably end up breaking the hammer. And that's because its crystals are all twisted and knotted up together. Actually, the Maoris had another way to make this stone even tougher still. The finest jade objects were made in New Zealand hundreds of years ago. Inaka, kahuraki, kawakawa, jade from different locations in the South Island, has different colour and different properties. Part of an object's importance stemmed from the time it took to make. 2 generations was not excessive, and some patu punamu with names like kaiarero were weapons as legendary as the sword Excalibur. The first New Zealanders believed that a block of jade contained the spirit of a fish, and as it was worked, that spirit passed out of the stone and into the artist. Modern carvers, both Māori and Pākehā, are rediscovering jade's fine properties. Unlike the objects of old, their skilled work has a monetary value. It has been said that New Zealand jade is one of the most undervalued stones in the world. But with the price of some pieces ranging through to $60,000 and $70,000, that situation is changing fast. There was a little gold left in my pocket and a little time to spare before the ferry. So I spent it observing some fish of a different spirit.
He's feeding them.
Yeah, I know, I knew that. You see that bit drifting.
Lake Wakatipu trout must be the biggest in New Zealand. And probably they're the best fed as well. For 50 cents a food drop, one can view a lively fish performance. A trout's eye view of the lake while warm and dry would be preferable to diving with them in this cool, snow-fed lake. Lake Wakatipu is deep, and its clarity means that weed grows to great depth, but it has little natural food. It was rather surprising to see eels in the lake. These big sluggers seemed well content, though, with trout food scraps. Queenstown is the town furthest west on latitude 45 south, and though I have 130 kilometres left to travel, I'm at the end of the road. Only 2 lakes, 5 rivers, and about 4 ranges of mountains to go.
I had to buy myself a souvenir of my time in Queenstown. I mean, everybody does. It took me a while, though, to decide what it was going to be. Something to remind me of this part of the journey, which has been the trail of old gold, then real gold, and now new gold, the tourism. Well, I've had enough of that. So I decided on a piece of old gold, a piece of jade, to go with the real gold. But the strongest impression on me here has been the trees. I mean, there's so many of them, and they're all conifers, well, nearly all, making Queenstown more reminiscent of somewhere on latitude 45 north than here on 45 south.
All around Queenstown, I've seen the look of a future New Zealand landscape. The pines seem to be spreading effortlessly from the forests and plantations. I've now begun the final chapter of this journey. Lake Wakatipu is a boundary between present and past. A major fault line marks the transition between the slabby schist rock, which has been easy company across Otago, and the more blocky rocks and steeper terrain I'll face further west. Lake Wakatipu breathes. Every hour it rises and falls up to 20 centimetres due to the pull of the moon and the push of winds. And from the ferry one imagines the 400-metre deep glacier that ran down from the mountains, creating Wakatipu, the trough of the breathing monster. I expected to meet beech forest as soon as I stepped off the ferry, but the western shore of the lake is mainly clothed in bracken fern, the legacy of fire. However, in the Greenstone Valley, I'm seeing the landscape more as the seekers of jade saw it. This was never a source of that precious rock, but a route to the west where it was found. And it was where I saw my first extensive beech forest. The hand of man has lain lightly on this part of latitude 45 south. The New Zealand Forest Service maintains the area, which is becoming highly popular with trampers. As the weather closed in, I was rather pleased to end the third part of my journey in comfort. It had been well worth informing the Forest Service in Queenstown of my journey west. After a trip in the clouds to the Upper Capels Valley, I learnt of an extraordinary search in progress. There's tantalising evidence that one of New Zealand's oldest inhabitants, said to be extinct, is still with us. For several years, Rhys Buckingham and others have been seeking to prove that the South Island kokako, our finest songbird, still survives here. If kokako lives, how appropriate that it may be found within sight of Fiordland, the last refuge for many old New Zealand species, and the last part of my journey.